Part 1. The Code No One Believed Could Be Broken. Opening hook. There is a quiet irony in the story of World War II. One of the war's most decisive breakthroughs, one that shaped strategy, shortened the conflict, and saved hundreds of thousands of lives, was achieved not in the famed huts of Bletchley Park, nor by the legendary figures who would later become synonymous with Enigma. It began years earlier, in a place far from the public imagination, in the lecture halls of Poznan, where three young Polish mathematicians, barely out of university, unknown to the world, and armed with nothing but pencil, paper, and a dangerous confidence in pure logic, did what every Allied intelligence agency insisted was impossible. They broke the German Enigma. But the greater irony is this. When historians later told the story, much of the world forgot who had opened the door, forgot who first cracked the machine's rotating ciphers, forgot who built the first replica machines, forgot who handed the Allied powers the tools that Bletchley Park used to launch its later triumphs. This documentary is about those forgotten pioneers. Marian Rejewski, Jerzy Różycki, and Henryk Zygalski, and the quiet intelligence war that began long before Blitzkrieg, long before Churchill's speeches, long before the world knew the word ultra. It is a story of brilliance, espionage, betrayal, courage, and mathematical genius under crushing pressure, and of how Poland, a nation soon to be invaded from both east and west, gave the Allies the key to victory before the war had even begun. The seed of a secret war, 1928 to 1932. To understand why Poland, of all nations, became the first to break Enigma, we must rewind to 1928, 10 years after independence, 10 years after a nation erased from the maps had clawed its way back from partitions by empires. Poland was rebuilding. Its borders were fragile, its politics unstable, its military anxious. Between Germany and the Soviet Union, Polish intelligence officers understood one truth better than any Western government. Survival depended on knowing what the enemy planned. So when German military communications began shifting to a mysterious new encryption device, the Enigma machine, Polish cipher experts immediately took notice. At first, the German device was a commercial invention, created by engineer Arthur Scherbius. Businesses could buy it to protect corporate secrets. But by the late 1920s, the German Reichswehr had modified the machine into something far more complex. A military encryption system using 3 internal rotors, a plug board, and constantly shifting internal wiring. British and French intelligence agencies took one look at the system and effectively gave up. According to archival records, a senior British cryptanalyst described Enigma as mathematically unassailable. The French had a lucky break. They had a spy. The French spy who opened the first door. In 1931, a German cipher clerk named Hans Thilo Schmidt, financially desperate and resentful of his position, agreed to sell classified materials to the French intelligence service. Under the code name Haché, he delivered something priceless: German Enigma, key lists, instructions, and internal manuals. The French, overwhelmed by the complexity of the system, could not break the cipher themselves. The British were no better equipped. So the French turned to the one country that had both the motivation and the mathematical talent: Poland. In late 1931, French intelligence passed the stolen Enigma documents to the Polish Cipher Bureau. Most of the Western world still believed Enigma to be impregnable. Poland decided to try anyway, and in the end they did not just try, they succeeded. But not because of espionage, not because of luck, but because of mathematics. Poznan, where a new breed of cryptologist was born. In 1929, the Polish Cipher Bureau had quietly recruited a group of students from the University of Poznan. Young men with exceptional talent in abstract mathematics and permutation theory. Among them were Marian Rejewski, Jerzy Różycki, and Henryk Zygalski. These young mathematicians did not belong to the traditional world of cryptanalysis, dominated by linguists, puzzle solvers, and classical codebreakers. Instead, they viewed cryptography through a mathematical lens, one that emphasized structure, not language. This decision changed the future of the war. In late 1932, the trio was assigned the near-impossible task: reconstruct the internal wiring of the Enigma machine based solely on intercepted messages and the stolen German manuals. The manuals provided procedures. The messages provided patterns. But the machine itself, the Poles did not have one. According to Rejewski's later account, they were fighting a shadow with equations. This was not cryptanalysis. It was reverse engineering through pure logic. Rejewski's breakthrough, the permutation attack. The man who cracked the system was Marian Rejewski, a quiet, methodical genius in permutation theory. Using the German operating procedures from the French, Rejewski realized that the repeated message indicators, sent at the beginning of every transmission, created mathematical patterns in the encrypted text. Even without knowing the machine's internal wiring, those patterns could be analyzed with group theory, a field of mathematics so advanced that many intelligence services barely understood it. Rejewski treated each encrypted letter as a permutation. He mapped out how the machine must be transforming each symbol. He built a massive series of equations. Historical records from the Polish archives describe this moment as a new frontier in cryptology. By December 1932, Rejewski did something that no one else in the world had accomplished. He deduced the secret internal wiring of all 3 German rotors. The Poles then commissioned a local engineering firm to build the world's first Enigma replicas. They worked. For the first time, Germany's unbreakable cipher had been pierced, and no one outside Poland knew. The Silent Years. Poland's Intelligence. Gold Mine, 1933 to 1938. From 1933 onward, the Polish Cipher Bureau read German secret communications, often in real time. The information was staggering. Troop movements, mobilization plans, Luftwaffe expansion, naval deployments, and internal political orders. According to surviving Polish records, by 1938 they were decrypting thousands of messages. Germany had no idea, but as the 1930s progressed, the Germans made changes, adding new rotors, expanding plugboard connections, tightening procedures. Each modification made the system exponentially harder to break. The Poles responded with innovation. Zygalski and Różycki, the next wave of genius. Breaking Enigma wasn't a one-time accomplishment. It was a race against German upgrades. To meet this challenge, Henryk Zygalski developed a series of insightful paper sheets, now known as Zygalski sheets, which allowed analysts to deduce daily keys even with plugboard wiring. Jerzy Różycki developed the clock method, a technique that identified the position of rotors based on subtle timing patterns in the cipher. Every new German improvement forced the Poles to invent new mathematical tools. They were fighting a technological arms race alone. And then, in late 1938, Germany made a change that threatened everything. The addition of 2 new rotors increased the complexity of possible settings from thousands to tens of millions. For the first time, the Poles were falling behind. They needed allies, desperately. But would the British or French believe them? Would they share resources? Would they understand what the Poles had built? The answer came in a single meeting. The secret meeting at Pyry, July 1939. The world was weeks from war. Tensions in Europe were at a breaking point. German ultimatums echoed across the continent. Polish intelligence, reading Enigma messages, saw what was coming. Knowing they would soon be overrun, knowing their work risked being lost forever, the Polish Cipher Bureau made the most consequential decision in Allied intelligence history. They invited representatives from Britain and France to a secret meeting at Pyry, a forest outside Warsaw. The British delegation included Alistair Denniston, head of Britain's Government Code and Cipher School, Dilly Knox, one of Britain's leading cryptanalysts. Both believed Enigma could not be broken. Both assumed the Poles were asking for help. Instead, the Poles revealed what they had been hiding for 7 years. They unveiled the wiring of the original rotors, the methods for deducing daily keys, the clock method, the Zygalski sheets, and, most shocking of all, an entire working Enigma machine they had built themselves. British records, declassified decades later, reveal the shock. The Poles had achieved with pencil and paper what we believed impossible with machines. The French representative was stunned. Denniston reportedly struggled to grasp how deeply the Poles had penetrated German communications. Dilly Knox immediately understood. This changed everything. Poland then handed over all their materials, the fruits of 7 years of secret work, for free. In that moment, the modern Allied intelligence war began, and the world's future shifted. But what came next was brutal. The invasion, the destruction of a country, not its secrets. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. 17 days later, the Soviet Union attacked from the east. The country was crushed between two giants. But the intelligence foundation the Poles had built did not die. Before Warsaw fell, Polish cryptologists evacuated. Many joined the French and later British intelligence efforts. Their work, their machines, and their methods survived the destruction of their homeland. Meanwhile, the replicas of Enigma delivered to Britain and France became the blueprint for early Allied attacks on the cipher. Bletchley Park was now armed. They had the foundation. They had the wiring. They had the mathematical framework. They had the techniques the Poles had refined for years. But the world, as it later turned out, would remember the story differently. The legend of Bletchley and the shadow of forgotten pioneers. In later years, when the Enigma story was revealed, much of the attention went to Bletchley Park. Alan Turing, Gordon Welchman, the British bomb machines, Hut 8, Hut 6, and rightfully so, Bletchley Park achieved extraordinary breakthroughs. But the narrative overshadowed a simple historical truth. Without the Polish breakthroughs of 1932 to 1939, the work at Bletchley Park would have begun years behind. Without a roadmap, without the wiring diagrams, without the Zygalski sheets, without the crucial conceptual framework that showed Enigma could be defeated at all. Even Turing himself later acknowledged the significance of Polish contributions. But history is rarely fair to those whose victories must remain secret during their lifetimes. And so, the story faded. Until decades later, when declassified documents began to reveal the full scope of what happened. This documentary continues in the next chapter with the dramatic escape of Polish cryptologists after the fall of France, the transfer of intelligence to Britain, and the evolution from Polish breakthroughs to Bletchley Park's legendary Ultra program. The truth is this: the Allied intelligence war began not in an English country estate, but in the lecture halls, offices, and cramped cipher rooms of pre-war Poland, where a small group of mathematicians changed the course of history long before the world even knew a war was coming.